I walked around my desk and shook his hand. I said, "Michael, you're not bothering me at all. I'm glad to see you. How are you doing? How's your mother?" He said, "We're managing. Some days are harder than others, but we're getting through it. My mom wanted me to bring you this." He held out the white box. He said, "It's from our restaurant, my dad's special dumplings. He made them from scratch every morning. My mom's keeping the tradition going. She wanted you to have some as a thank you." I felt a lump in my throat. This family had just lost everything that mattered, and they were bringing me dumplings. I said, "Michael, you didn't have to do this, but I'm honored, truly honored. Please tell your mother thank you." He nodded and said, "There's something else I wanted to tell you. After what happened in your courtroom, after you dismissed those tickets and hugged me, something changed. I'd been feeling so lost, so angry at the world, so unable to function. But that moment reminded me that there are still good people out there, people who care. It gave me the strength to keep going. You know, you and I, we're building something here, a community of people who believe in real justice, people who understand that compassion matters as much as the law. If that's you, if you want to be part of this, hit that subscribe button right now." I said, "Michael, you didn't need me to give you strength. You already had it. You showed it by being there for your father every day, by keeping up with school despite everything, by standing in that courtroom with dignity even when you were falling apart inside." He smiled, a real smile this time. He said, "I'm doing better in my classes now. I was failing 2 courses in January because I couldn't focus on anything. But I talked to my professors, explained what happened, and they're giving me a chance to make up the work. I think I'm going to be okay." I said, "You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be extraordinary. And someday, when you're a doctor treating your patients, you're going to remember what it felt like to be shown mercy when you needed it most, and you're going to pass that kindness forward." We talked for a few more minutes. He told me about his plans for the rest of the semester, about helping his mother at the restaurant on weekends, about the scholarship he was applying for to help with medical school costs. I listened to every word, and I felt something I don't always feel in this job. I felt hope that this young man was going to be okay.
All right, guys, buckle up, because this story goes far beyond a courtroom. It begins quietly, with a young man returning to thank a judge who once showed him compassion. What starts as a simple visit quickly reveals the emotional weight behind it. A grieving son offers dumplings made from his family restaurant, a small gesture loaded with gratitude, loss, and respect. This moment sets the tone for a story about mercy, humanity, and how one decision can echo far beyond the law.
Okay, that his father's sacrifice wasn't going to be in vain, that he was going to take all this pain and turn it into something beautiful by dedicating his life to helping others. Before he left, he shook my hand again and said, "Your Honor, I'll never forget what you did for me. Never. When I'm a doctor someday, I'm going to treat every patient with the same compassion you showed me." I watched him walk out of my chambers, and I sat back down at my desk. I opened the white box he'd brought, and the smell of fresh dumplings filled my office. I took one bite, and I could taste the love and tradition that went into making them. I thought about Michael's father waking up early every morning for years to make these same dumplings, building a life one dumpling at a time, creating something that would outlive him. That night I went home and shared the dumplings with my wife. I told her about Michael's visit, about how much better he seemed, about his determination.
From here, the exchange deepens as the young man explains how a single act of kindness changed his direction in life. As an observer, it's clear the judge isn't just hearing thanks, but witnessing proof that compassion has lasting power. The student speaks about school, survival, and rediscovering hope after grief nearly broke him. What stands out is how dignity replaces despair, showing how encouragement at the right moment can stabilize someone on the edge.
To become a doctor. She smiled and said, "You planted a seed that day in your courtroom. That young man is going to spend his whole life paying forward the mercy you showed him. That's real justice." Hold on. Before I tell you the rest of this story, I need you to make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because what happened next, what I learned about the impact of that one decision, it's something that still moves me to this day. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Several months went by. Spring turned to summer. I continued my work at the courthouse, seeing hundreds of cases, making hundreds of decisions. Some days I thought about Michael and wondered how he was doing. But I had learned long ago that you can't hold on to every case, every person who comes through your courtroom. You have to trust that you made the right decision in the moment and let it go. In September, I got a letter at the courthouse. The return address said Providence College. I opened it, and inside was a handwritten note on college stationery. It was from Michael. He wrote, and I'm reading this directly, Dear Judge Caprio, I wanted to write to you at the start of my senior year to let you know how I'm doing and to thank you again for your kindness last February. This summer I worked at Rhode Island Hospital as a volunteer in the oncology ward, the same place where my father spent his final weeks. It was hard at first, being back in those hallways, but it also felt like I was honoring him by being there for other families going through what we went through. I had to pause reading because I could feel emotion rising in my throat.
Time moves forward, and the story shifts into reflection. Months pass, cases pile up, and life in the courthouse continues as usual. Yet this one case lingers in memory. When a handwritten letter arrives from a student, its contents stop everything. The young man chose to volunteer in the same hospital where his father died. From a third-party view, this is where grief transforms into purpose, revealing resilience that few could summon.
This kid had chosen to spend his summer volunteering in the exact place where his father had died. The courage that took, the compassion, it was remarkable. The letter continued, I met so many families this summer who were struggling the same way we struggled, worried about medical bills and parking and how to keep up with work while spending every free moment at the hospital. I did what I could to help them. I told them about resources. I sat with them when they needed someone to talk to. And I told them about you, about the judge who showed mercy when I needed it most. Your example taught me what kind of doctor I want to be. Not just someone who treats disease, but someone who sees the whole person and recognizes their humanity. I wiped tears from my eyes. My clerk, Christina, came in and saw me crying and asked if everything was okay. I just handed her the letter and let her read it. When she finished, she was crying too. Michael's letter ended with this, I've been accepted to several medical schools for next year. Brown University offered me a full scholarship. I'm going to accept it and stay here in Providence.
As the letter continues, the impact becomes undeniable. The student describes helping families facing the same pain he once endured, offering guidance, comfort, and understanding. Observing this moment, it's clear the judge realizes his influence extended far beyond dismissed fines. The letter culminates with astonishing news: medical school acceptances and a full scholarship. The narrative shifts from sorrow to triumph, anchored by compassion shown at the lowest point.
The city that my father loved, the city that gave our family a chance, the city where a judge reminded me that compassion is just as important as justice. Thank you for everything, Your Honor. I hope I can make you proud. Respectfully, Michael Chen. I sat at my desk holding that letter for a long time. 40 years I'd been a judge. Thousands and thousands of cases. Some you win, some you lose, some you wonder if you made the right call. But this one, this case, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd done exactly what I was supposed to do. I wrote Michael back that same day. I told him how proud I was of him, how his father would be bursting with pride knowing his son was going to medical school on a full scholarship, how his choice to volunteer in oncology showed the kind of character that can't be taught in any classroom. I told him that he didn't need to make me proud because he...
The story escalates when the judge is invited to speak at a medical school orientation. Standing backstage, he's unexpectedly reunited with the same young man, now wearing a white coat. From an outside perspective, the symbolism is striking. The former defendant is now a future doctor, embodying the very values sparked years earlier. This reunion confirms that mercy, once given, can multiply into lives changed.
He already had, just by being the kind of person who turns grief into purpose. This is exactly why I still put on these robes every morning after 40 years, for moments like these, for the chance to make a real difference in someone's life when they need it most. If that means something to you, if you believe in that kind of justice, show me by hitting that like button and subscribing. Let me know I'm not alone in believing this stuff matters. 2 years later, I was invited to speak at Brown University's medical school orientation. They wanted me to talk to the incoming class about ethics and compassion in medicine. I wasn't sure why they'd asked a municipal court judge to speak to medical students, but I agreed to do it. I walked into the auditorium, and there were about 150 young people, all of them starting their journey to becoming doctors, bright faces full of hope and determination. I was standing backstage preparing my remarks when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and there was Michael Chen wearing a white coat with Brown Medical School embroidered on it. He was beaming. He said, "Your Honor, I hoped you'd remember me." Remember him? I'd thought about him more times than I could count. I said, "Michael, of course I remember you. Look at you. You made it. You're here." He said, "I made it because of you."
On stage, the judge addresses hundreds of future doctors. He recounts the parking tickets, the grief, and the choice between strict enforcement and compassion. As an observer, this moment reframes justice entirely. The applause isn't just for a speech, but for a philosophy. The lesson is clear. Authority paired with empathy creates trust, while rigid punishment alone creates nothing lasting.
Because you gave me hope on the worst day of my life. I wanted you to know that I requested that you be the speaker today. I told the dean your story about what you did for me, and she agreed that you were the perfect person to talk to us about what it means to treat patients with compassion. I was speechless. This young man had specifically asked for me to speak to his class. He'd shared our story with the medical school administration. He was making sure that other future doctors heard about the importance of mercy and understanding. The dean introduced me, and I walked out onto that stage. I looked at all those young faces, and I thought about the lives they were going to touch, the patients they were going to treat, the families they were going to help through their darkest moments.
After the event, the most emotional moment unfolds quietly. The judge meets the student's mother, who thanks him for giving her son hope when she feared losing him too. From the outside, this exchange reveals the unseen ripple effects of kindness. What once seemed like a minor ruling now stands as a turning point for an entire family, cementing the idea that justice can heal, not just punish.
And I told them about Michael. I told them about the morning he walked into my courtroom carrying the weight of his father's death. I told them about the parking tickets and the choice I had to make between enforcing the law and showing mercy. I told them that the best doctors, like the best judges, are the ones who remember that behind every case, every patient, every file, there's a human being deserving of compassion. When I finished speaking, the entire auditorium stood and applauded. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Michael, sitting in the third row with tears streaming down his face, clapping harder than anyone. After the event, dozens of students came up to thank me and shake my hand. But the moment that mattered most was when Michael introduced me to his mother. She was a small woman, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes that looked so much like her son's. She grabbed my hand with both of hers and said, in accented English,
Years later, the story continues through a newspaper article. The former student has opened a free medical clinic serving immigrant communities, named after his father's restaurant. As a third-party observer, the symbolism is undeniable. A dismissed parking ticket indirectly led to healthcare access for countless families. This moment reframes success, not as fame or money, but as service born from compassion.
Thank you for saving my boy. When his father died, I thought I would lose Michael too. He was so sad, so lost, but you gave him hope. You reminded him that good people still exist. You gave me my son back. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't saved anyone. I'd just done what felt right in the moment. But looking at this mother's grateful face, hearing the emotion in her voice, I understood that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create ripples we never see. That day in my courtroom, when I dismissed those tickets and hugged a grieving kid, I had no idea it would lead to this moment. But that's the beautiful mystery of compassion. You never know how far it will reach. Look, I need to ask you for a favor. If this story is resonating with you, if you're getting something out of it, hit that subscribe button for me. It helps me share these lessons with more people who need to hear them. Michael graduated from medical school 3 years later. I know because he sent me an invitation to the ceremony. I couldn't attend because of my court schedule, but I sent him a card with a note that said, "Your father is smiling down on you today. You've honored his memory by becoming exactly the kind of man he hoped you'd be."
The judge reflects on decades spent on the bench, weighing wins, losses, and doubts. This case stands apart. Observing his reflection, it becomes clear that true certainty in justice comes not from rules followed, but from humanity preserved. The narrative shifts from one man's story to a broader philosophy. The law must serve people, not the other way around.
Last year, I read in the Providence Journal that a new free clinic was opening on the East Side, specializing in treatment for underserved immigrant communities. The article mentioned that the clinic was founded by Dr. Michael Chen, who wanted to give back to the community that had supported his family. The clinic was named the Golden Dragon Community Health Center after his father's restaurant. I cut out that article and I keep it in my desk drawer. Sometimes when I'm having a hard day, when I'm questioning whether this job still matters, when I'm tired and wondering if I'm making any difference at all, I take out that article and I read it. I look at the picture of Michael in his white coat standing in front of his clinic, and I remember that one moment of mercy, one decision to choose compassion over strict enforcement, helped create all of this. I've learned one thing in 40 years on this bench. The law is important. Rules matter. Order matters. But the law serves people, not the other way around. And sometimes the most just thing you can do.
The perspective widens further as the judge recalls his immigrant father and the mercy once shown to him. From an external view, this generational connection explains everything. Kindness received becomes kindness given. The story draws a direct line between past sacrifice, present judgment, and future impact, showing how values passed down quietly shape institutions.
Is recognize that the person standing before you is going through something you can't fully understand and offer them grace instead of judgment. My father used to tell me a story about when he first came to America. He was working construction and he made a mistake that cost the company money. He was terrified he'd be fired, that he'd lose everything and have to go back to Italy in shame. But his boss, an Irish immigrant who'd come over 30 years earlier, just put his hand on my father's shoulder and said, "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do next." He didn't fire my father. He gave him another chance. And my father spent the rest of his life trying to pay forward that kindness. That's what we do, those of us who've been given opportunities in this country. We remember the mercy we were shown, and we extend it to others. We remember what it was like to struggle, to be afraid, to need help. And when someone stands before us in their moment of need.
Age and fatigue enter the story, but so does purpose. The judge admits retirement crosses his mind, yet stories like this keep him returning. From a third-party lens, this isn't about power or position. It's about remaining present for the next person who might need understanding more than punishment. The motivation is service, not status.
We respond with compassion. I think about Michael's father a lot, a man I never met but feel like I know. He came here with nothing. He worked brutal hours in a brutal industry. He saved every penny to open a restaurant. He raised a son who's now a doctor serving the very community he belonged to. That's the American dream right there, not wealth or fame or power. Just the chance to build something better for your children than what you had for yourself. And when that man was dying, when he was spending his last days in a hospital bed, his son was by his side, parking illegally, racking up tickets, breaking the rules. And you know what? His father wouldn't have cared about those parking tickets. He would have just been grateful that his boy was there, holding his hand, saying goodbye properly. That's what mattered. That's all that ever really matters. So when Michael stood in my courtroom that February morning, I wasn't just seeing a kid with unpaid tickets. I was seeing my father. I was seeing every immigrant who ever...
The narrative circles back to the original courtroom moment. The parking violations were real, the fines lawful, but observing the reasoning behind dismissing them reveals deeper justice. A grieving son chose family over rules. The judge chose empathy over revenue. Together, those choices altered countless futures, reinforcing that fairness sometimes requires flexibility.
Broke their back to give their children a better life. I was seeing a son who'd done exactly what he was supposed to do, who'd honored his father in the only way that truly counts, by being there when it mattered most. The law said he owed $450, but justice, real justice, said he owed nothing except maybe permission to grieve without adding financial stress to emotional devastation. So I gave him that permission, and in doing so, I like to think I honored not just Michael and his father, but every parent who ever sacrificed for their child, every child who ever sat vigil by a dying parent's bedside, every family that ever struggled to do the right thing while following every rule perfectly. Let me stop here and ask you something. Do you think justice is just about following rules? Or do you believe that true justice requires wisdom?
The story expands again with examples of other cases. A single mother, an elderly man, everyday people burdened by circumstance. As an observer, the pattern becomes clear. These decisions won't go viral, but they matter profoundly to those affected. Justice here operates quietly, improving lives without headlines or applause.
Passion and the courage to see beyond the black and white of the law into the complicated grays of real human life. I genuinely want to know what you think. Leave me a comment because I read every single one, and hit that like button while you're down there. I'm 82 years old now. I've been on this bench longer than some of my clerks have been alive. People ask me all the time when I'm going to retire, when I'm going to hang up these robes and spend my days with my grandchildren. And the truth is, I think about it. My body's not what it used to be. My back hurts by the end of the day. I get tired more easily than I did 20 years ago. But then I think about Michael. I think about that moment in my courtroom when a grieving kid needed mercy and I was in a position to give it. I think about the doctor he became, the clinic he founded, the thousands of patients he's going to help over his career.
Criticism follows, as it always does. Some call this approach too soft. But from the outside, the contrast is clear. Punishment without context creates resentment, while mercy with accountability creates stability. The judge doesn't reject rules. He applies them wisely. This distinction defines the philosophy at the heart of the story.
I think about the ripple effects of one decision made with compassion instead of rigid adherence to rules, and I realize I'm not ready to stop yet, because maybe tomorrow another Michael will walk through those courtroom doors, another person in crisis who needs someone to see them as a human being instead of just a case number, another opportunity to choose mercy over judgment, understanding over punishment, compassion over cold enforcement of regulations. That's what keeps me coming back. That's what makes me set my alarm for 7 every morning and drive to that courthouse and put on these robes one more time. Not the power or the title or the authority, but the chance, just the chance, that I might be able to make a real difference in someone's life on their worst day. This job has taught me so much over 40 years. It's taught me that everyone has a story, that you can't judge a person based on the charges in their file, that behind every
The judge poses reflective questions, inviting others to consider what they would do in his place. From a neutral perspective, this isn't self-praise, but accountability. He openly weighs alternatives, acknowledging that justice is rarely simple. The moment reinforces that wisdom often lies in asking questions, not delivering lectures.
Violation, every citation, every infraction, there's a complete human being dealing with circumstances you can't see from your bench. It's taught me that mercy isn't weakness, that compassion isn't being soft on crime, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is look at the rules and decide that in this particular case, with this particular person, strict enforcement would create more injustice than justice. My father died 20 years ago. I think about him every day. I think about the lessons he taught me, the example he set, the values he instilled. He never went to college, never wore a suit to work, Never sat behind a big desk making important decisions, but he was one of the wisest men I've ever known, and everything I've tried to do in my career,
As the narrative winds down, gratitude takes center stage. The judge thanks viewers for caring about someone they've never met. Observing this closing, the message is clear. Empathy connects strangers. Stories like this survive because people recognize themselves in them, reminding us that compassion remains a shared human language.
Every decision I've made that I'm proud of has been rooted in the simple principles he taught me. Treat people with dignity. Remember where you came from. Give others the chances you were given. Show mercy because you've needed mercy. When I dismissed Michael's tickets that morning, I wasn't thinking about going viral or being on the news or any of that. Social media wasn't even in my mind. I was just thinking about my father, about what he would want me to do, about what kind of judge he raised me to be. And I knew, without any doubt, that he would want me to help that kid, that he'd be disappointed in me if I made a grieving son pay fines for parking illegally while his father died. So I did what my father would have done. I chose compassion, and that choice created something beautiful. It gave Michael the strength to keep going. It inspired him to dedicate his life to helping others.
The story concludes with a return to first principles, equality before the law, enforced with wisdom and humanity. From a third-party viewpoint, the legacy isn't one ruling, but a mindset carried across decades. A reminder that justice, at its best, sees the person behind the paperwork. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.